Hello and welcome to our podcast where we are celebrating International Men's Day in the UK on Wednesday the 19th of November 2025 at Ashford and St Peter's Hospital's NHS Trust. The three overarching core themes for International Men's Day in the UK are making a positive difference to the wellbeing and lives of men and boys, raising awareness and or funds for charities supporting men and boys' wellbeing, and promoting a positive conversation about men, manhood and masculinity. My name is Amandeep Chana and I'm an Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the Trust. And we're joined today by Graham Peterkin. Welcome, Graham.
Hello, Mandy. Good to meet you.
Good to see you. We've been working together for a while, haven't we, as we've been collaborating on something called Men's Den.
Yeah, we have. I think it was about 2 years ago from memory that we got together, didn't we? I think from a meeting I contacted you and we spoke about collaborating Men's Den to talk about men's issues. It wasn't actually called Men's Den at that point, was it?
We didn't have a name, I don't think.
No, it was an idea that we floated between one another.
I can't believe it was 2 years. It feels like it was longer, actually. I feel like we've done so many of them.
I think now because we've got into the swing of it, and I think now we're getting a bit more at ease with it.
I know we've spoken about Men's Den just now, but I'm wondering if you can tell our listeners what Men's Den is.
Well, Men's Den, I think we identified that men often don't speak out or have a platform to enable them to speak out. And there's an awful lot of statistics out there stating the suicide rate within men in particular. I think it's about 75%, but I haven't got all the stats on me. But it just feels that men needed somewhere to come to. So therefore, we got together and it was an external to our organisation. Because I felt that we did try, when I worked for Surrey County Council, we did try a men's talking time, but it was only attended by a handful of men, the same men every time. And I think the idea of joining a institutionalized type organizational meeting thing was really detrimental because they felt that it was a work thing rather than a health thing. So the idea of Men's Den was to have a collaboration with yourselves at St Peter's and Ashford Hospital. Mm. And then we got SABP, the Surrey and Borders Partnership to joining, and various other public and third sector areas to come together to talk openly on Teams, so it's virtual conversation about men's issues. Now, men's issues, not necessarily just mental issues, can be about various health issues. I mean, we've had subject matter including mental health, relationships, alcohol, also prostate cancer, masculinity, and various other conversations, which has opened my eyes in particular, because I mean, I'm no expert in any of these fields, but I think just by being on these talks that we actually get to hear people, and it opens our own eyes as well, and it gives us an idea of what men are concerned about. And since then, the numbers have grown, I think, because our network's got a bit bigger. We've got East Sussex, and we've now got Way Through, who I've moved to recently. And it's just about having a safe space. It's not recorded. The men turn up on Teams. They don't have to have the microphones on. They don't have to cameras on. But quite often you notice that the people that don't initially have microphones and cameras on, they start to appear on the screen and start to talk more openly. And the conversation just flows. And I think it's a great idea for men to get together.
Yeah, and you said it's a collaboration between us, Ashford and St Peter's, and then Surrey County Council, SABP, and we've also got Surrey ICS now as well. And then now you're working for Way Through are also part of it. Yeah. And it's open to anybody who works for any one of those organisations. Any man who works for them can come and join. And it's a free thing at lunchtime, isn't it? 12 to 1 for an hour.
Yes, every 2 months, isn't it? On I think it's the second Wednesday from 12 to 1. So we tend to make sure that we keep that static. It seems to be a good time for men to come together and know, even if they haven't got the date, they can work it out when it is going to be happening for the next one.
Yeah, and you said that you're not a subject matter expert, and neither am I. Nobody who's part of the group is, but when we have something that's specialist, we do try and get somebody in who is a specialist, don't we?
Yeah, and also on every single session we have mental health first aiders who stay on right to the very end to pick up anyone who's been triggered by another subject matter. But I think the main thing with it is that people can talk about their lived experiences. We don't say that we've got the answers, but it's about getting it out into the air. And as you said, sometimes we do have specialist talks come in. We've had a couple now, haven't we, that people come in and they've been really encouraged by the subject matter and the engagement that the participants have enjoyed.
Yeah, and like you said, there's no pressure for anyone to speak. They don't even have to have the cameras on. They can just listen. And I think we've had some really interesting discussions, haven't we?
Yes, I mean, it's amazing really, because you just don't know what's going to happen. You've opened up with the subject matter and then it can be hit by a curveball and be taken down a not a completely different route, but a route which you hadn't predicted would happen. And that's what I enjoy, I think, because it opens up extra talk, extra areas where men can talk. It's all very well talking about a particular subject, but if we can be flexible and broaden out on that, then it's so much better, because then we can open up another discussion, which obviously the participant has a need to talk out loud about. And I think people who talk out loud listen to themselves as well. So it becomes a subconscious, becomes a conscious subject matter issue, whatever you want to call it. It could be a problem. And that talking out loud could be the first steps for them to make that research into a solution, whether it be medical or talking to someone else. But it's the start of their journey.
And I don't know about you, but I've always found the different perspectives so interesting, because we're a really mixed group and it's not the same faces every month. And I often get to hear about stories and different ideas that I hadn't considered and probably wouldn't ever be exposed to hadn't I met those people. So I've always found the perspectives really interesting too.
Yeah, I think I definitely get something out of it myself, because of what you just said there, Mandy, about the subject matters come up which I hadn't even considered in the past. I mean, the reason behind me getting into this, the main was because of my own lived experience from years ago. So I had an interest in certain areas with issues that I struggled to talk about at that time. But now doing this has now opened my eyes up to other areas that men want to talk about.
You mentioned a minute or two ago about you changing jobs and that you used to work for Surrey County Council and you now work for Way Through.
Yes, Way Through is a charity that looks after, they used to be known as Richmond Fellowship, which is more familiar with people. There's been a transition or merge between Richmond Fellowship and Humankind, and it's now called Way Through. And Way Through looks after people with mental health, physical problems, homelessness. They have safe havens, alcohol and substance misuse. And the part of the area that I work for is Work Well, and we look after more holistic areas for people to come to us, and we discuss their barriers to work. So they need to have a barrier, and it doesn't have to be mental health, it can be physical as well. So we deal with people who have had maybe a mental breakdown and are struggling to get back into work, and we are there to do peer support and support them in. I've got a client who's coming back from maternity leave and going back into the workplace, so we do that as well. And how we do it is we have a multidisciplinary team that have experts that are in the field of mental health advice. So we have mental health advisors, skills and employment advisors, and physical activity advisors within our collaboration. But what we also manage to do is look at other external sources that we can get our clients to investigate. So it could be something like Surrey Adult Learning. So they might get a hobby, people might think that's not related to going back to work, but it's getting them back. It's getting them back into the social element. So it gets them out of doors, gets them out into a group of people, and they might just go and do a bit of pottery. But from that pottery becomes a bit of conversation. From that conversation becomes a bit of confidence. And then hopefully it turns into a relationship for them to feel much better going back into the workplace.
Okay, so it's not just a case of finding a job for this person. It's looking at the person in a much more holistic way.
Yeah, I mean, so my main aim is to get people to feel ready to go back to work. Some of them are already in work, maybe on a sick note. So I cover people who have problems with confidence, or even people who have problems with their line management and struggling to able to be assertive within the workplace. So we just give a bit of peer support. We can actually go along to meetings with them if we're allowed to. Obviously, we need to make sure that we understand the boundaries of what we do. So again, it's giving not only men a voice, but it's giving everyone a voice in order to have some sort of support, which isn't demanding. So everything that we do, we make suggestions. So it might be a suggestion of you keep a journal in order to track your day-to-day habits, set your triggers, coping mechanisms, etc. But if that doesn't work for that particular person, we're trying to think of something else that might work. So it could be reading a book, listening to music, being mindful, walking, doing social activities. So it can be anything. So it's not about one size fits all. It's about working with the individual. And I think going back to men's then, I've learned an awful lot from men's then that I've been able to take into this role of not understanding what people, but being more empathetic. And also with my own past problems I've had and how I've managed to get through those with coping strategies, etc. I can pass that knowledge on for them to try. But again, it's only a suggestion and not demanding. So it's not 3 strikes, you're out.
Sure.
So it usually runs over 12 weeks. But that can be flexible. If they're happy after 8-10 weeks, then they can go on. But we're not going anywhere. We will say we can close your case, but please come back if you require that more support. But then if we get to the 12 weeks and they need a few more weeks, that's never a problem either. So we can continue to make sure I had a client yesterday who was ready to go, but he felt that because all his other support systems were all closing at the same time, he just asked Graham, could you possibly stick with me for another few weeks just so as I don't have everything finishing all at once? And that was absolutely fine. So I haven't got another conversation with them in a few weeks' time.
Sounds like a really useful service for people who need it.
Yeah, and I really can't promote it more. I think from working through, I'm 59 years old now, and I've had many jobs, and I think this has been missing in the workplace for an awful long time, for people to have support. I think, if you go to a doctor, doctors are brilliant, but they can only deal with what they're diagnosed with. So they can either do medication or surgery, for etc. But we try and look at the whole bigger picture of the physical, mental relationships. We have people who have relationship problems as well. So it's just about giving that extra care and help to enable them to be ready to get back to work, which is the ultimate aim. But if they're not ready after 12 weeks, at least we feel they've got the tools in order to move forwards with.
And you said that you mentioned it's not just for men, way through and work well, anybody
who's over 16 and lives in Surrey. It's a pilot scheme at the moment in Surrey, so you either need to have a residence in Surrey or a GP in Surrey.
So for work well, you need to be a resident in Surrey.
Yeah, but Way Through can offer other support areas outside of Workwell.
Okay, so Way Through and Workwell are different.
Yeah, Way Through is the organisation, that's a charity. Workwell is the title given to the role I do.
And I'm wondering how you got into working for Way Through.
A few years back, I had mental health problems. And just over a year ago, my father died, and I was working in Surrey. And whilst I was in Surrey County Council, I worked as a wellbeing consultant for a secondment role. And I absolutely love that job. And this is where I got into talking to you, Mandy, about Mensden. Unfortunately, that secondment role finished, and I ended up back in my old role, which I felt I now know I really didn't enjoy it. And I did go back in. My mood went low. My father died, and lots had happened. And I just did a stock take of my life. And I was actually supported by Way Through during this period. They said, what type of support do you think you'd want to do? Or what type of role do you think you want to do? Because I did say that I'm not really happy in my work. And I said, well, I'd like to do what you do. Well, it was more of a flippant suggestion. And I said, well, we are recruiting. Why don't you contact my manager? So I contacted the manager, and they sent me an application form. So I applied for this particular role, which I was then they came back to me and said, no, you can't have that role. We suggest you go for this workwear role. They must have read my CV and the experience I've got with Mensden and the looking after the wellbeing champions within Surrey County Council. And so I made that leap of faith to move away from a job that I felt was detrimental to my health into a job where my skills and passion could be more brought out of me to help other people.
So, I mean, you mentioned it was a leap of faith. I mean, looking back on it now, how do you feel about the leap of faith that you took?
I call it a leap of faith because, as you know, in any job, you sometimes you're tied into it due to all the benefits that you enjoy. You know, I had lots of holiday allowance, sickness allowance. I'm getting older now, so I'm looking at my pension pot, and moving away from a role that's secure, I had to take a wage drop to move into Way Through. But after taking stock of my life, I thought, well, I need to be happy. I need to be being Graham again, rather than pretending to be someone who I don't particularly not particularly gel with. So I felt I was good for that job, but that job wasn't good for me, that I left. And I'm about 6 months away that was now, and I'm loving exactly what I do now. The people around me are so supportive, I suppose because it's the type of role that I'm in. My colleagues are in the same role, so therefore we help one another. We do have very difficult conversations sometimes, and if that happens, it's happened to me, I can then get straight onto the phone to someone and say, have you got 10 minutes? I just need grounding. And we just talk about the weather, and it's just really just to get away from that trauma that you've just experienced with someone, and allow yourself to come down off that level, back down to being Graham again, and then I'm in a much better mindset to able to put some sort of support plan in for that person and think more rationally.
Sure. And you said that you wanted to be Graham again, and I'm wondering what steps, other than changing your job and working for Way Through, I'm wondering if there was anything else that you did to become Graham again.
I think at the time you don't know. You don't really know. I didn't know who Graham was. But now I feel I'm more of a Graham, because people have said to me how much more calmer I am. My relationship with my family seemed to be much better. Whether that was bad in the past, I don't know. It definitely wasn't bad, but it was certainly not as good as it is now. I'm more resilient, more relaxed. I don't stress at night time thinking about I've got to be waking up to do a job that I don't enjoy doing, and I need to do these reports, blah, blah, blah. I actually thrive to get through to the next morning and look forward to my meetings with the clients, because I know from the feedback I've had as well, that's been so encouraging, that I enjoy doing and people enjoy what I do. I just used the example earlier on about the guy who just wanted a few more weeks to talk to Graham. There was no extra resources that he needed, but it would just have someone, a platform that he could just talk to and, again, be himself, possibly, where he maybe is doing an act where he worked and with his family, but he could just be himself. And I think that's very important. It's a bit of a cliche about being yourself, but I think once you've grasped it, it's a really powerful thought.
I'm wondering if you did anything specific, and you may not have done, to find out who Graham was.
I did quite a bit of therapy. I did have CBT, which initially, I think with any therapy, physiotherapy, anything like that, you tend to only practice it when you're in front of the therapist. But it became a point when I realised that I would need to practice this in between the therapy sessions, because that's where the learning and change takes place. I know there's books out there, motivational books, etc. But I feel it's about making small changes. So don't look at the big ultimate goal at the end. You look at every step you've got to take. And I think that's how I found a better way forwards. I'm still making those steps. You know, we're trying to make, you're always trying to better yourself if you want to.
Sure.
But not to be trying to run a marathon tomorrow. You need to put your shoes on first. And that's a technique I say to people who say, I haven't been out the house because I can't be bothered, because it's cold. I said, well, don't go out. Put your shoes and coat on and see how you feel after that. And I think that's where I've realised myself, I've got to get my shoes and coat on. And once you've done that, you might as well go out the front door. And once you're out the front door, you might as well go on a journey. And then you might want to come back. But next day, you do the same. You go on your journey. But you might go a little bit further on your journey and start taking photographs, for example, of your surroundings. So you're becoming more mindful. And then you go back home. Next day, shoes, coat, door, little walk, photographs. Then you start to meet people. You talk to them what a lovely day it is, and have you noticed that tree behind you? So you start to notice things. And I think, so that hasn't happened from a plan on day one. Day one was about getting the shoes on. But by the end of the week, you're so much further ahead within that journey. So I think that's where I am at the moment. I'm through a journey.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you didn't have to, but I'm really pleased you did. And how do you use all of that knowledge that you've gained about yourself in your work at Way Through?
I think because I can empathise with an awful lot of problems that people have, especially with mental health problems, people's sleep problems, and I can suggest to them the techniques that I've learned, even the books I've read. You might want to try reading this particular book. I won't mention any books on this because they may not work for everyone who's listening, but it's about making those suggestions to other people. But some things people do struggle to explain. And it gets to a point and I say, well, actually, I get it. You don't need to say any more. I know where you are, and there are no words to explain how you feel, because feelings and emotions are very difficult to explain. They're not tangible so much as physical areas of health. I think by being on my journey, I'm managing to pick up a few passengers and dropping them off at various places on their journey in order that they can then continue with their own journey to their destination that their goal is.
Yeah, that's so. I've got a really clear image in my mind, almost like you're on a bus and you're picking other people up along the way and dropping them off at their stop, and I imagine they decide where their stop is.
Yeah, but also on that journey, you've got to realise there might be deviations, there might be diversions, there's going to be potholes, so it's not a straight journey.
Mm.
It is, you do have to take, sometimes you have to turn around and go back a little bit in order to move forwards.
Let's say that I was somebody living in Surrey and I wanted some support with maybe getting out the house or even getting into the workplace again. What should I do? How can I contact you or somebody at Way Through?
There are various literatures that are around in the hospital, libraries, etc. But if you just Googled Surrey Workwell, you would have been taken to a Surrey County Council website. And from there are links that take you through to a referral form. So you can do a self-referral. It's a short form. It's 4 pages long. It just asks you basic things like name, address, phone number, email address, national insurance number, etc., and who your GP is. And that then goes into our system, which is analysed by an administrator. And then the administrator then passes it on to Workwell Coach, and that's what I do. So anyone who's in my area, I will be assigned, and then I make an initial assessment call with that person. It does explain what we do, how we collect the information, in order to make sure we're completely transparent before they start to talk openly about their own issues. We also run clinics in various places around Surrey.
And how could I find out about these clinics?
We do run clinics in the community for people just to drop in, and if we're available without too much going on, we can do the referrals for them and certainly explain to them how we work, and at least they can go off with some information. I can't help talking about it because I'm so passionate about what I do. I certainly don't do it for the money. I just love what I do, and that's a reward that I take. People can also be referred by their GP.
Yep.
We do have a few GPs now, especially I know in Banstead, who refer people to me, and every Wednesday afternoon I have a list of people to call, and I explain who we are, and then I can do the referral for them. But it's not just Banstead and Epsom, it's the whole of Surrey. So I'm one of 15 Workwell coaches, and we all have our little areas, but we can cross through the areas if there's any particular reasons why someone might want a male or a female coach.
So if I Google Workwell Surrey, I'll be able to find you or somebody else that can support.
Definitely. Or if you see me in the street, I'll tell you.
Graham, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me along. I've really enjoyed it. It's a passion of mine. I love talking about stuff like this. So keep up your great work too.
Thank you. And I'd like to also say thank you to you, the listener, for listening to our podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we hope that you've learned a little more about the support available for our male colleagues who work in the Trust, but also what support there is for people across Surrey. Thank you, everyone, and see you soon.